In this text study, I'd like to begin with some observations regarding the nature of communities and how they're formed. Populations are people, but communities are people who share responsibilities. And covenantal communities are people who share responsibilities not because they're kin, but because they've chosen to do so. The Hebrew Bible didn't invent the idea of covenantal communities, but it did pioneer the conviction that the God of all creation not only communicates with people and communes with people, but chooses to enter into community with people. And as this is the God of all creation, all of us are welcomed into the Creator's covenantal embrace, if we are willing to share in the ensuing responsibilities with one another. I would say that that's the foundation of biblical social ethics. In our study together, these past many months, we've studied a series of texts drawn from our sacred traditions, leading from friends to family, family to strangers, strangers to adversaries. Each of us have been each in these positions in our lives, and now Interfaith Action has helped us to form relationships built around shared responsibilities. That is, helped us to form among and around ourselves covenantal communities. And I've prepared a couple texts for us to study in this regard. Once again, the first is a primary scriptural text, and then a commentary to help welcome us into a discussion that's been ongoing for a long time now. A discussion that helps us to probe the implications of the text that I've chosen. The primary source comes from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 21, verses 6, 7, and 8. The text reads like this. If in the land that the eternal your God is assigning you to possess, someone slain is found lying in the open, the identity of the slayer not being known, then all the elders of the town nearest to the corpse will wash their hands over a heifer whose neck has been broken in a wadi, and will then make this declaration: Our hands did not shed the blood, nor did our eyes see it done. Absolve, O Eternal, your people Israel, whom you redeemed. Do not let guilt for the blood of the innocent remain among your people. So reads the primary text. There are many implications one could pursue in exploring what that text might teach us. But I have a source that I'd like to apply to that text, which draws us in a very particular direction, which I think has significant implications for our forming together of covenantal community. This text comes from the ancient rabbinic source, the Babylonian Talmud. Commenting on the specific reference in the passage to the declaration that the elders make regarding our hands haven't shed this blood, this source from the Talmud reads, but how could we even imagine the elders of a court having caused the bloodshed? Rather, the passage from the Talmud goes on to suggest it must mean this person, having come under our jurisdiction, wasn't then sent away without food, nor our having been aware of the person was the person nevertheless left to move on without someone to accompany them on their way. So reads the commentary. What I'd like to explore in particular, very briefly, is what the commentary is suggesting about the relationship between the common notion that a crime results from an action and the possibility that crimes may also result from inaction. And in this regard, I would note that later commentaries on the passage from Talmud are unclear as to whether the person we're talking about was the victim of a crime or its perpetrator. In either case, it looks as if the Talmud is suggesting that when the elders ask that they be absolved from any complicity in the tragedy of this lost life, what they're asking for is an understanding, not that they weren't explicitly involved in the criminal act that led directly to the death, but they also weren't involved in an act of negligence that facilitated the circumstances that led to the loss of life. That is to say, what the Talmud is suggesting is that there are not only fatal actions that can lead to catastrophic results in a community, but fatal inaction, fatal left undones in a community, which can ultimately lead to equally catastrophic consequences. The example in the passage includes, was there a person among us for whom there was no access to food and either starved or had to turn to a criminal act to feed themselves? Was there a person among us who had no place to live and therefore was left exposed to the ravages of the countryside or predatory individuals? In either case, the insight is profound that criminal actions not only result from direct violent behavior, but from an inability of a community to fully embrace the responsibilities that come with living with covenantal obligations. That a community can be negligent in criminal ways. Which leads to the questions that I would ask that we explore in greater depth regarding our own communities. First, what are the fatal left undones common to the communities we know best? What makes these things undone potentially fatal? Why do we tend to leave these things undone? And how might we more successfully do them in the future? Having considered those questions, I would simply close with this observation. Relationships and the obligations that come with relationships are often a pain in the neck until you find yourself alone. And responsibilities can be an aggravation until you're told what you have to offer doesn't matter. Our texts for this study session touch on both of those possibilities within the context of covenantal bonds and covenantal communities. In covenantal communities like ours, like the one that we are forming among ourselves through interfaith action, we're not alone, and what each of us can offer matters. I would just say amen to that.